In 1985, in a small village named Sharifpura in Etawah, India, it was summer, and as the heat intensified, a particular day was approaching. On the evening of July 19th, an event occurred in the village that shook everyone to their core. The situation became so dire that people confined their children indoors, and the streets became deserted. An unusual silence fell everywhere. People who were usually seen in the alleys were now only peeking from their windows. On that evening of July 19th, 1985, a woman from the village, standing at her doorstep, suddenly took long breaths and then collapsed, giving up her life. Her in-laws cried loudly. The local doctor checked her pulse and declared her dead. Her body had started to turn yellow. The entire village was in shock after this incident. Frightened villagers advised the family that before any negative energy spread throughout the village, it would be better to perform the final rites as soon as possible. According to Hindu customs, since she was married, the village women began to adorn her body. Now listen carefully, all the interesting things start happening from here. From the room where the dead body was being adorned, a woman's loud scream was suddenly heard. When the other woman asked her what happened, immediately a second woman's loud scream came from the same room. In no time, around 19 women ran out of that room, screaming in panic. They were continuously trembling, which sent shivers down the villagers' spines. No one dared to enter the room to see what was happening. Then suddenly, a strange sound echoed in the villagers' ears. When everyone listened closely, they realized that someone was making a cat, cat, cat sound from that room. The sound kept increasing, as if two bones were hitting each other. Hearing that terrifying sound, half the villagers immediately ran away, and everyone went into their homes and locked their doors. The fear was so intense that even those who remained didn't dare to peek into the room to see what was actually happening inside. What was happening in that room that made people confine even their children indoors? That cat, cat, cat sound was still ringing in their ears. The situation became so critical that scientists from the University of Virginia in America reached Sharifpura village in Etawah, and what they saw there shocked them deeply. In 1968, in a small village in Etawah called Angad Ka Nagla, a baby girl was born in the house of a man named Choti Singh. He named his daughter Sumitra Singh. Choti Singh worked in a textile mill in Gujarat. Due to work, Choti Singh and his wife had to migrate often. So when their daughter was 5 years old, Choti Singh left Sumitra to live with his niece Fulmala in Veerpur. Sumitra always missed her parents. When she was 11, her mother passed away, and she felt even more lonely. When she was 13, her father married Sumitra off to Jagdish Singh, who lived in Sharifpura. See, Jagdish often had to stay in Delhi for work. It was out of necessity. He had to run the household. Sometimes he had to stay away from home for months. Meanwhile, poor Sumitra, who had been alone since childhood, her parents weren't close in childhood, and after marriage, her husband was away, making her feel even more lonely. But now, her life was about to change forever. In December 1984, Sumitra gave birth to a lovely child, and for the first time, she realized that her son would end all her loneliness. She always held her son close to her chest. For the first time in her life, Sumitra was very happy, but perhaps God did not approve. When her son was about 2 months old, one morning, Sumitra was going to the village well to fetch water, tying her son to her chest. She had a bucket in one hand and the other hand on her son's head. Walking on that raw road, she suddenly stopped at a spot, paused. The bucket fell from her hand. Hearing the sound of the bucket, the villagers' attention was drawn towards her. They saw Sumitra standing in the same spot like a statue. When a woman went near Sumitra and asked her what was wrong, if she was okay, Sumitra didn't say anything. She just stood there the same way. When that woman looked at Sumitra, she saw Sumitra's hands were twisted backwards. Then her attention went to Sumitra's face, and she saw Sumitra's eyes were rolling around, and she was grinding her teeth loudly. She was grinding her teeth so hard that the sound could be heard far away. Hearing the loud kach-kach sound of her teeth, the woman standing ahead screamed loudly and stepped back in fear. Because of this, the child clinging to Sumitra's chest started crying loudly. That woman thought perhaps a ghost had entered Sumitra. See, people standing there started feeling scared. A crowd began to gather slowly to witness Sumitra's state. People didn't know what to do. 5 minutes passed. Sumitra was continuously grinding her teeth and rapidly moving her eyes, creating an atmosphere of complete fear. Before the villagers could understand anything, suddenly, the sound of Sumitra's teeth grinding stopped, and she immediately regained consciousness. After regaining consciousness, when she looked around, everyone was staring at her. At that time, she didn't understand what was happening. Then she noticed that her son was crying loudly. She felt so embarrassed at that moment. She quickly picked up the bucket and went home, pushing through the crowd, without making eye contact with anyone. But this thought was eating away at her from inside. Something definitely happened to her at that moment that people weren't telling her. Anyway, she still thought maybe it happened due to tiredness and tension, so she ignored it. That night passed, and a few more days passed well. But then, after a few days, when Sumitra's father-in-law was sitting in his room, he suddenly heard a cut sound. When he followed the sound and came out of the room, he saw his daughter-in-law frozen in one place, completely caused. Her hands were twisted as if trying to break by twisting backward, and her eyes were rolling as if trying to sink into her skull. And because of grinding her teeth like that, the cut sound was coming. Seeing this, Sumitra's father-in-law was startled and frightened, and he called out to Sumitra's mother-in-law. Seeing this scene, her mother-in-law's throat went dry, and she screamed loudly, trying to bring Sumitra back to consciousness. But Sumitra did not budge. Slowly, nearby neighbors also started gathering at the house. Everyone was scared, seeing this form of Sumitra. People started saying, "Surely a Pashach demon has gripped her." This continued for 10 minutes. Then suddenly, Sumitra's eyes stopped at one place, and the sound of teeth grinding also stopped. Sumitra had regained consciousness. Now, as soon as she saw people around her, she covered her face with her veil out of shame. She asked everyone, "What happened? Why are you all staring at me like this?" Her mother-in-law said, "What happened to you just now?" Sumitra said, "Nothing. I was just going to cook food." Well, the family didn't ask anything further. As usual, Sumitra got busy with her household chores and put her son to sleep after feeding him milk, and she herself fell asleep. See, the family was scared. In their fright, they called their son Jagdish and said, "Brother, come quickly and take care of your wife." Then the villagers also brought up the incident that happened with Sumitra at the well. Hearing this, Sumitra's in-laws called a local tantric. He chanted mantras and moved a fly-whisk sarvar and said, "Nothing has happened to her, everything is fine." Meanwhile, Jagdish quit his job and came home, making a living by working around the village. Because his family was afraid that Sumitra might do something to her child, Sumitra also started keeping her distance from her child. Even though she didn't like being away from her child, she had to take this harsh step for the child's safety. Now the child only stayed with his grandmother. In a way, the grandmother became the child's mother. Sumitra would only spend time with her child when a family member was present, so that if Sumitra's other form returned, the family member could save her son. See, this continued for several months. For the next 5 months, Sumitra would have these episodes intermittently. Sometimes she would stay in that form for hours, eyes rolling, teeth grinding, and standing like a statue. But gradually, something different started happening with her. Now, whenever she went into that form, she would also start muttering something. The family members didn't understand, but she didn't stop muttering. According to Sumitra's in-laws, Once the spirit of a woman who had drowned in the same well entered her, and once the spirit of an old man entered. Days passed like this, and then came the day of July 16th, 1985. From where this story is going to change completely. Sumitra and her family had finished their lunch and were resting. Sumitra was also thinking of taking a little rest when suddenly she took on her other form. Her teeth started grinding and her eyes started rolling. But this time, in that form, she said something that made the whole family's throats go dry. In a terrifying, foreign, and unfamiliar tone, Sumitra said, "Today, exactly 3 days from now, I will die." As soon as she said this, she returned to consciousness. And all the family members were stunned and scared, looking at her, wondering what the hell had happened, what she was saying. Then Sumitra suddenly said, "Look, I feel something is happening. You are hiding something from me. Don't hide anything from me. Tell me quickly what happened today. What did I say today?" Sumitra's husband, Jagdish, said, "Don't you remember what you just said?" Sumitra replied, "No." Sumitra's husband told her, "In that form, you just said that exactly 3 days from now, you will die." Sumitra said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" When all her in-laws confirmed the matter, she finally accepted it. See, now Sumitra also started feeling scared. The day arrived, the day Sumitra had predicted her death while in that form. As morning dawned, Sumitra decided that today she would not do anything that could risk her prophecy coming true and being confirmed. And yes, today she also kept her distance from her child so that he would be safe. Morning passed, and the afternoon also passed, but nothing happened to Sumitra. Meanwhile, the family members were also happy, thanking God immensely that Sumitra's prophecy was about to be proven wrong. As evening fell, Sumitra thought, why not get some fresh air outside? So she went and stood at the doorstep. Seeing her, her neighbor came near her. Then they both started talking and laughing. They were still talking when Sumitra became still like a statue. Sumitra's neighbor realized that she was about to go into that form again. But this time, Sumitra neither ground her teeth nor twisted her hands backward. But Sumitra, whose hands were hanging down, raised them and placed them on her forehead. Then she started shaking her head violently and taking long breaths. Then suddenly, her hands fell, and she stood stiff like a statue at the doorstep again. Then, for the last time, a long breath came out of her mouth. Then she started making a very deep and heavy sound. This continued for some time. Then, in no time, everything became quiet. When Sumitra's family members ran to Sumitra, they saw that she was standing, but her face had turned yellow and her breathing had stopped. The family members were very scared, so they called a local Vaidya, traditional healer. But as soon as the doctor checked her heartbeat and pulse, he immediately declared her dead. The entire village was shocked after this incident. They knew Sumitra had predicted her own death, and she died on that very day. Talks started in the village that this was either a divine curse or a punishment. Frightened villagers imposed a ban on even their children leaving the house. Some villagers went to Sumitra's house and told her family, before any negative energy spreads in the village, perform Sumitra's final rites as soon as possible. Otherwise, something very bad will happen. The villagers got busy with Sumitra's funeral rituals. According to Hindu customs, the village women started adorning Sumitra. About 21 minutes had passed since Sumitra had died. On one side, the villagers gathered wood and made a pyre, and on the other side, the women were about to complete Sumitra's adornment. But from the room where Sumitra was being adorned, the villagers standing outside suddenly heard a woman scream. The other women were still asking what happened, when 19 other women ran out of that room, screaming loudly. People outside were scared and panicked, asking what happened. Then, one of those women pointed her finger towards the room where Sumitra's dead body lay, and said, "Sumitra just opened her eyes." After that, she closed her eyes, and her pupils are moving under her closed eyelids, just like how your pupils move when you dream with your eyes closed. It was a very terrifying scene. People didn't have the courage to go inside and see. Then some brave women gathered courage and entered the room. And when they looked at Sumitra's dead body, they saw that Sumitra's lungs suddenly inflated, and then, taking a very deep breath, Sumitra immediately sat up. All the brave women standing there screamed and ran out of the room. When Sumitra's father-in-law, standing outside, asked them what happened, they said, "Sumitra's ghost is back, and she's sitting and grinding her teeth." When Sumitra's husband heard this, he ran to Sumitra. He saw her there in her other form. Then the sound of teeth grinding suddenly stopped, and Sumitra regained consciousness. She asked the people standing around, "Where am I, and who are you people?" Again, that doctor, or perhaps the Vaidya, was called. The doctor checked her pulse and heartbeat and said, "It's a miracle, Sumitra is alive again." Jagdish, seeing her in good condition, hugged her tightly, crying. But then Sumitra pushed her husband away forcefully and said, "Who are you? Don't you feel ashamed hugging a strange woman?" He told her, "Foolish woman, I am your husband, this is your mother-in-law, this is your father-in-law, and this is your son, your piece of heart whom you always kept close to your chest." Then Sumitra shouted loudly, "No, I don't know any of you. And this is not my son, and you are not my husband." The doctor told their family, "Sumitra is currently in shock. Stay away from her a little. She will be fine on her own." That night passed, and the next morning arrived. Sumitra was perfectly fine physically, but she still hadn't regained her memory. She wasn't letting anyone come near her, especially her husband. Sumitra even tried to run away from her house, but somehow Jagdish caught her and brought her back. She would scream loudly, "You are not my family. I want to go to my sons, Rinku and Tinku. My children are waiting for me. Let me go." But her husband, Jagdish, said, "What are you rambling about? You only have one son, and he is right in front of you." But she wouldn't listen. Jagdish's family members called many babas and tantrics to their home, but none could cure her. Then one day, Sumitra finally opened her mouth to her husband, and what she said after that surprised everyone, made their hair stand on end, startled them. Sumitra said, "My name is not Sumitra, it is Shiva Dwavedi, and I am from Dibyapur." But Sumitra's husband thought that perhaps after coming back to life, she had gone mad, and she would remain like this forever, because even after months, she didn't recognize anyone and didn't even look at her son, only insisting on meeting Rinku and Tinku. Anyway, Sumitra's husband loved her very much. He was forced to accept her as she was. Now what I will tell you next might surprise you. Sumitra had never been to school. She was illiterate in a way. Maybe she could read a few letters, that's a different matter. But now, suddenly after coming back to life, her reading and writing ability had also increased. She even started speaking English. Besides this change, there was also a change in her dressing style. She started wearing saris in a more urban style, or let's say, like city women. And she refused to eat from the old utensils. She said, "I want clean utensils, and that no one should touch them." She even said, "I am from a higher caste, don't even touch me." In those times, you know the kind of caste system that existed. Besides this, her voice had also become high-pitched, and she started talking to her husband and family members in a somewhat rude and disrespectful manner, as if they were from a lower caste. Seeing this behavior, her husband and the people around her guessed that when she was dead for 21 minutes, she must have suffered some kind of mental attack on her brain, due to which she was behaving like this. Keeping all these things in mind, Sumitra's husband and family members had also stopped trying to cure her. But yes, they made sure she didn't run away. In this way, a few more months passed. Then came the date that brought disaster upon Sumitra's family. October 19th, 1985. An unknown person knocked on their door. Sumitra's husband opened the door. He saw an elderly man wearing a suit and boots, holding a large book close to his chest, standing just 5 feet away from their doorstep. The man introduced himself as Ram Siya Tripathi, and he asked Sumitra's husband if a woman who had been acting strange for some time, or was possessed by a spirit, lived there. Sumitra's husband had no idea who this man was, or where he came from. But he couldn't understand how this gentleman knew about his wife. Sumitra's husband thought for a moment and stared at the man from head to toe 2 or 3 times and said, "Wait here, I'll be right back." Meanwhile, Jagdish, wondering who this man could be, went to Sumitra's room and told Sumitra that a man named Ram Siya Tripathi was standing outside the door. Usually, Sumitra didn't listen to her husband and family members and ignored them. Her husband thought she would do the same today. But as soon as Sumitra heard the name Ram Siya Tripathi, it was as if a wave of happiness spread across her face, and she jumped up and ran to Ram Siya Tripathi, who was standing outside the door, and hugged him tightly. And she said something that took Ram Siya Tripathi aback, and in surprise, Tripathi Sahib immediately pushed her away. Actually, at that moment, Sumitra had said, "I knew you would come, Papa." But when Tripathi Ji pushed Sumitra away, Sumitra looked at him a little angrily. Tripathi Ji asked Sumitra, "What is your name?" She replied, "Shiva Dwivedi." Hearing that name, Tripathi Ji went into shock. He was stunned. He sat down on the platform outside the house, holding his head, and Sumitra also went and sat beside him. Then Tripathi Ji opened the book he had brought with him, holding it close to his chest. Actually, that book was his own daughter's wedding album. There were many pictures in it. Ram Tripathi pointed to a picture and asked, "Do you know this person?" Sumitra looked carefully at that photo and quickly spoke the names of all the people. Ram Tripathi was in shock hearing those names because she was telling everyone's names absolutely correctly. And when Sumitra's husband, standing behind, saw those photos, he had no idea who these people were. Then Ram Tripathi turned the page. Again, Sumitra told all the names correctly. Tripathi Ji turned the page once more, and this time pointed to a particular photo with only one person in it, and asked Sumitra, "Do you know who this is?" Seeing that photo, Sumitra became completely still, and she didn't answer immediately. Her emotion changed to anger. She said, "How can I forget her? She is my sister-in-law, and it was she who killed me by hitting me on the head with a brick." As soon as Sumitra said this, Ram Tripathi threw the book down, and, with trembling hands, hugged Sumitra and started crying. Meanwhile, Sumitra's husband was confused, wondering what kind of drama was going on. After they had calmed down, Tripathi Ji told Sumitra's husband, "Come, let's go inside. Then I will explain everything to you." Now sitting inside, Ram Tripathi Ji told Sumitra's family members a story that left the entire family stunned. And you will also be shocked. And this story was about his daughter, Shiva Dwivedi. The same Shiva Dwivedi, whom Sumitra had been claiming to be for several months. But Jagdish and his family members did not believe Sumitra, because they thought that perhaps she had gone mad after coming back to life. But when today, Sumitra's husband and his family heard the name Shiva Dwivedi from Ram Tripathi Ji's mouth, they were also amazed. Ram Tripathi started speaking. He said, "Shiva Dwivedi was my daughter. She was born on October 24th, 1962. And she did her schooling and passed her BA from Etawah. At the age of 18 and a half, I married her to Chedi Lal Dwivedi from Dibyapur." Now, talking about the distance, Dibyapur was a small village located about 100 kilometers away from Sharifpura. Ram Tripathi said, "I was a lecturer and quite wealthy, so my daughter Shiva's in-laws constantly demanded dowry. Therefore, Shiva used to have frequent fights with her in-laws. Shiva has 2 sons, Rinku and Tinku." Hearing this, Jagdish and his family members sitting there were even more surprised, because Sumitra often insisted on meeting Rinku and Tinku. Shiva was the most educated in her in-laws' family, and because of this, her in-laws hated her. And she would question everything. Due to these fights, Shiva often wrote letters to her father, Ram Tripathi, telling him what was happening to her at her in-laws' house. On May 18, 1985, Shiva had a major argument with her in-laws. That evening, Shiva called her uncle and told him, "I am being beaten up. Uncle, please take me away from here." Her uncle said he couldn't come right now, but would definitely come tomorrow. The next day, May 19, 1985, was the day when Shiva Dwivedi's body was found on the railway track at Phapund railway station. Shiva's uncle filed a police report, stating that her in-laws had killed her, but her family members said that she had left after a fight during the night and committed suicide. But the surprising thing was that no train had arrived that night. There was only one injury mark on her head and no cutting marks. Other than that, her entire body was intact. Shiva's uncle kept crying to Shiva's in-laws, "Please don't perform the final rites yet. First let her father come, and let an autopsy be done." But they didn't listen to anyone and quickly cremated her body without an autopsy. When Shiva's father, Ram Tripathi, reached Dibyapur, he only found his daughter's ashes. After this, Shiva's in-laws were arrested. But due to lack of evidence and the absence of the body, they were released. See, during this case, Ram Tripathi had to visit Dibyapur many times, and it was then that he heard a rumor that Shiva's soul was entering a woman in a village named Sharifpura, 100 kilometers away from here. Since he was an educated professor, he initially dismissed this talk. But then one day, he asked an acquaintance to investigate this matter, and that acquaintance confirmed that yes, this is true. But Ram Tripathi ji was a little angry. He thought perhaps someone was faking it and misusing his daughter's name. And then, on October 19, 1985, he decided to go to Sharifpura village. Let me tell you, he had never been to Sharifpura village before. He had heard the name Sharifpura for the first time. Asking around here and there, he somehow managed to reach that village. He asked someone there for the house of a strange woman who was said to have ghosts or spirits possessing her. The villagers showed him the way to Jagdish house, and while narrating all this, Ram Tripathi ji said to Sumitra's family members, "This is how I found this house, and I am happy I decided to come here. Otherwise, I would never have met my daughter again, and I would never have found out who her killer was. So this is how Tripathi ji reached this house." The fact spread on the internet and YouTube that Shiva used to write letters to Tripathi ji, and even told him the address to come to. This fact is absolutely incorrect. Sumitra, who became Shiva, had no role in this. Ram Siya Tripathi ji himself found this house through his own efforts. Anyway, regarding what had happened with Sumitra earlier, she died. She used to grind her teeth, and her eyes would roll. When Sumitra's husband told this story to Shiva's father, Ram Tripathi, Tripathi ji was also surprised, because Tripathi ji had never experienced anything like this in his life before. He came here to expose a fraud, but he himself was shocked. After Shiva Devadi's murder on May 19, 1985, 2 months later, on July 19, 1985, Sumitra also died after predicting her death, and then was resurrected. And then, 3 months after her resurrection, when Ram Siya Tripathi finally arrived there, it was then that they understood the connection between all these events. This means that Shiva's soul wandered for 2 whole months until Sumitra's death occurred, and then it entered Sumitra's body. It seems quite difficult to believe, doesn't it? You must be thinking that Badmash Bai is just telling a story, that this can't be true. How can one believe these things? Who knows? Maybe everyone, her family members, or let's say Tripathi ji, concocted this whole thing. Let me tell you, when newspapers started publishing this story, it finally reached the scientists at the University of Virginia in America. Then, those scientists themselves came to India and investigated this story. And they confirmed that yes, this incident was absolutely true. And they even published their findings stating that this was not a hoax, not a rumor, but absolutely true. They conducted interviews with many people and also spoke to Sumitra, who was now Shiva. Excerpt from interview. Interviewer: "Okay, I want to ask you, Sumitra." Shiva: "Don't call me Sumitra." Interviewer: "Oh, so you are Shiva now?" Shiva: "Yes." Interviewer: "Why happens in this world? If someone is born, do they change repeatedly, sister?" Shiva: "No. You have changed before, right?" Interviewer: "Just ask her. So when I have changed once, when I have become Shiva once, can I become Sumitra again and again?" Interviewer: "Okay, so you are Shiva now." Shiva: "Yes." "What? Would I become Sumitra?" Interviewer: "So do you remember anything about Sumitra?" Shiva: "Not now. I said that before, I'm saying it now. End of excerpt. And it was also found that those two families, meaning Tripathi Ji's family and Sumitra's family, had no prior connection. Therefore, they concluded that this case is a landmark example in the field of paranormal phenomena. After her apparent death and revival, she was exhibiting detailed and accurate knowledge about another person's life and death, which could not have been obtained through normal means. Sumitra, who became Shiva, started adopting Brahmin habits because Shiva was from a Brahmin family, and she rejected her original identity, meaning Sumitra. Sumitra, who became Shiva, told her father, Tripathi Ji, that she would like to go to his house. After this, she went to Atawa with her father, saw her house, and saw the women standing there. And her father said, "Find your mother among them." But she slowly went inside and touched the feet of a woman standing in the kitchen and hugged her. Her mother said, "Daughters don't touch feet, they hug." They were both very happy to meet. But she could not meet her sons, Rinku and Tinku, because first, Sumitra was from a lower caste, while Shiva's in-laws were from a Brahmin caste. So they never allowed her to enter their house because she was in Sumitra's body. Since it was Sumitra's body, Shiva decided to accept Sumitra's son as her own son. She thought, if I take care of Sumitra's son, God will take care of my two sons. And then, slowly, she accepted Jagdish as her husband, and Sumitra's son as her son. Sumitra, who became Shiva, finally took her last breath 13 years later, in 1998, and her husband, Jagdish, reached his two wives in 2008.